But Jesus was already talking about worship. And that's what makes this conversation so beautiful, because confessing where we really are is worship to God. Have you had your daily drip? Welcome back to Season 3 of the Daily Drip podcast, where we create kingdom content that builds community. I'm your host, Aaron Levy, and let's squeeze them scripts for that daily drip. Hey, we're in the longest conversation that Jesus has ever had in Scripture. We're on part 2 of that right now. Last week, our drip was This week, our drip is worship. And I try to be a preacher, so now since it's the same conversation, I'm trying to use W's and whatever. Don't judge me. But hey, I think this is going to be beneficial, because have you ever had a conversation with somebody, you go very specific, and then they feel very pressured, so then they go very theory and try to get the attention off of them? We're going to see that, because we're learning how to have better conversations with people as well as we're going through John, because John, as we go through this book, we're seeing how Jesus had these beautiful conversations with people, this being the longest one. Last week, we were at John chapter 4, 1 through 15. This week, we're 16 through 27. So put on your seatbelt. Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come here." The woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You're right in saying you have no husband, for you've had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir," third time calling him sir, we'll talk about that, "I perceive that you're a prophet." Yeah, he a prophet. "Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor Jerusalem you will worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. And the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things." Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." This is rich. Let's connect. I'm geeking out right now. Let's connect it to last week to give context, because if you didn't watch last week's episode, you're going to want to stop this one, go to last week, finish it, and then go into this one, because this is a continuation of the same conversation. Because in verse 16, when he's saying, "Go call your husband and come here," Jesus is changing the subject, because remember, he got her to a point where she was interested and wanted this water. Remember verse 15? "Hey, give me this water so I don't have to work so hard and my life can be easier, sir." And a lot of times that's how our prayer is to Jesus. "Hey, sir, I really don't know you, but can you make my life better?" And Jesus said, "Okay, well, go get your husband." And what Jesus is saying is, hey, if you want relationship with me, you got to be honest with me. See, she was only asking for results. Jesus was asking for relationship. And what he's saying is, hey, you've had 5 husbands. No, before that, look what she does. "Oh, I'm not married." No, verse 17, "I have no husband." So she didn't tell the full truth. She just "I don't know, husband." And then Jesus exposed it all. "Yeah, you've had 5 husbands, and the cat that you're with right now, you're not married to him." What does that equal? That equals 6 men that she's been with. Who's she in front of? The 7th man. What does that represent? Perfection. Completion. That's why I love the book of John. That's why I love this situation, because she's tried as hard as she can to get results in relationship from man, and now she's in front of Jesus, but she don't know who he is because she calls him sir. Verse 19, "Sir, I perceive that you're a prophet." Yeah, you're a prophet. And what's so cool about Jesus being a prophet is he knows every single thing about us, yet he still chooses to love us. Yet he still chooses to engage us and have conversation. He knows all her failure, knows all our failure, and is still offering grace. But look how verse 20, she tries to change the subject. She tries to like wiggle out of it. I don't really want to talk about my husbands from back in the day. I don't want to talk about my situationship. I want to talk about worship and prophets' perspectives and policies and governance. And because our fathers worship it on this mountain, but you say in Jerusalem. She's trying to change the subject. I be doing the same thing. You probably do the same thing when it's like, hey, we're not where we're going in this conversation. Let me just. But Jesus was already talking about worship, and that's what makes this conversation so beautiful, because confessing where we really are is worship to God. Because Jesus says we have to worship him in spirit and in truth. So what she could have done is say, hey, I have these failed relationships and I have shame in my life, and I really need a relationship with you because you have a grace that I need. That's worship. Worship is not singing songs before the preacher comes on stage. Worship is a lifestyle. Worship is obedience, and it's obedient for us to confess where we really are. Think about all the way back from the garden. God was doing the same thing. Adam, where are you? Oh, what happened was, I was naked and my wife was over there. No. Just stop changing the subject and be honest. Are you lonely? Are you angry? You confused? Wherever you're at, Jesus wants to be very honest with you, saying, I have grace for that. But would you be really honest with Jesus and share what you need grace for? She's had relationships that hasn't worked out, yet she has the best relationship in front of her, and she wants to talk about religion. So here's the thing. How are we going to practice this? What can we learn from this? Let's stop talking about worship and let's just be worshipers. Let's stop disagreeing with how other people worship and assess what our worship looks like. Is our worship relegated to when we're at church? Or can you worship God at your desk? Can you worship God in traffic? Can you worship God when your spouse gives a comment to you that's making you feel some type of way? Because worship is not relegated to this religious polity. Worship is giving sacrificial obedience to God, singing to him when we don't even feel like it, and letting our faith take the lead instead of our feelings. And that's why I love what he said here. He said salvation is from the Jews, verse 22. Remember, he's talking to a Samaritan woman. There are some people that would say salvation is for the Jews. And that's why there was some division about worship, because they were saying, no. You have to be Jewish to be a worshiper. No, not Jesus. Jesus said, yeah, it's from the Jews. But since I'm Jesus and I'm for everyone, remember John 3:16, whosoever, Jews, Gentiles, black, white, Mexican, Asian, whatever, then it's from the Jews because it started there, but now it's expanding to Samaria. It's expanding to a Samaritan woman. So Jesus is saying, hey, worship is for everybody, not for the religious men, not for just the Jews, for everyone. So I love the fact that now she talks about Christ in verse 25. I know the Messiah is coming. He who is called Christ. She's talking in theory again. And Jesus just does a mic drop. Verse 26. And that's going to be the cliffhanger because we're going to talk about the rest next week. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. Sounds like a rapper. That's how rappers be talking. He's like, look, I'm Jesus. I'm the one worth your worship. Now, she has some thinking to do. Jesus is inviting her worship even though he knows her failure. That's the drip this week. That's the practice this week. Sometimes we feel we're not worthy to worship God because we raise our hands in the air and we're reminded what our hands have touched, or what we've used our hands to scroll in on our phone, or we're afraid to sing songs to God because that's the same voice that has cussed out somebody or gossiped about somebody or lied on somebody. And what Jesus says is, will you just confess that to me? And as you confess that to Jesus, as we confess that to Jesus, and we get that out of us, God can download his grace towards us, and worship is giving back to God what he's already given to us. So that's how we're going to practice it. Confess where we really are. Stop trying to change the subject when it gets tough. And let's worship God through the tough moments. Stay dripping, my friends.